My name is Marco now. I'm going by Marco because that's what my grandparents called me. And after I retired, I decided that's what I'm going to be from now on. So I'm Marco Bellatini, the minister emeritus of this congregation. My pronouns are he and him. I was here for 17 years as your minister. And I welcome all of you to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus. We begin the service by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Adena, Hopewell, Wyandot, Miami, Seneca, Erie, and Cayuga people. We cultivate this awareness that our symbolic acknowledgments may be accompanied by concrete acts of solidarity. And I point out to you in your orders of service the Shrum Mound. The Shrum Mound on McKinley Avenue, it's worth visiting if you haven't seen it. That mound was there when Alexander the Great was walking on the earth, and the people, the Adena people, were a civilization here in Ohio when Buddha lived and the Hebrew prophets lived. And so I think that's remarkable that we acknowledge this kind of past right here in Ohio. What we now call Ohio was the center of their civilization from 800 BCE to 100 CE. It's very moving to go visit the mound if you haven't seen it. Please turn to 1000, hymn 1000, and we're going to sing Morning Has Come. It's in the Teal book.
Please be seated. Good morning. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to serve this congregation as a new member of your board of trustees. My pronouns are she, her, they. Welcome to First UU. Whether you are joining us online or in person, or whether you are a new face or a familiar one, we are glad you're here. If this is your first visit, please stop by the welcome table out in the gallery for your first-time visitor gift. Everyone is invited to scan the QR code, wherever it is, on the screen. Here you can check in, find our order of worship, you didn't get one, the Joys and Sorrows form, and our donation page. So, if you weren't able to attend General Assembly, our mass North American World General Meeting we hold every year, but are curious about what happened, voted on, or learned about, join us Sunday, July 23rd, for General Assembly in 2 hours. It's, I think, after the service. Even though it's summer, we still have a lot going on, so if you would like to be informed about what's going on, join our mailing list, receive weekly updates and announcements, you can do this by filling out a connection card at the visitor stand or online under Connections tab on the website. And finally, now it is time to submit your joys and sorrows. You can use the QR code, go to our website, and, or, anyway, you can submit these, and anything received by the end of the children's story, the Time for All Ages, it'll be shared during the caring meditation. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Kelly McNeil. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my honor to serve this congregation as your minister of congregational life. Today is a special day that has taken a little bit too long to arrive. As we've shared, when a minister leaves a congregation, they are not supposed to be in contact with that congregation for at least 2 years. This allows new ministry to form roots and flourish. After 2 years, if the former minister is still around town, a covenant is formed between the new ministry team and the former minister. When this covenant is formed and agreements are made about what role, if any, the previous minister will play and what is in the best interest of the congregation, the new ministry team can choose to welcome the former minister back into the congregation. Well, Reverend Marco retired a little bit more than 2 years ago. And the current ministry team agreed that it was time that he be welcomed back. Reverend Marco is not just... Reverend Marco is not just our previous minister, he is also our minister emeritus. The title of minister or religious educator emeritus is granted to honor a religious professional's long and commendable service to a particular congregation. Only the congregation can bestow this amazing honor by vote of the congregation. So we are very excited for you to be in our pulpit again, Reverend Marco. And on a personal note, I look forward to learning from and working with you in the future. Welcome back, Reverend Marco Bellatini. And we would now like to invite any children who want to help us bring in the light to meet Gus in the back and out in the gallery, and they will be back with us soon. And now, let us center ourselves with our prelude.
I'm Nancy McDonald Kenworthy, and I'm here to read the children's story. So now I invite the children to bring the light.
Our chalice lighting this morning comes to us from Barnaby Fetter, based on words of Dag Hammarskjöld. We kindle a flame we trust will lead us forward as we travel in unknown lands, where the question, shall I ever get there, resounds. A clear, pure note in every silence. We light this chalice to honor that silence.
Thank you. Thank you for help lighting our chalice. I've been a longtime member of this church, 32 years now. My pronouns are I and me, but your pronouns for me is she and her. I have a problem with this. I'm a former English teacher, what can I tell you? Today's story is called The Lady and the Spider. It's written by Faith McNulty and illustrated by Bob Marstall. On a summer day in a lady's garden, a spider stood on a lettuce leaf. She looked about and saw hills of green and valleys of green. Between two leaves, she saw a green cave. Walking daintily on her 8 legs, she went inside. With the tips of her long front legs, she felt the sides in the ceiling and the floor. The cave suited her. It was a leafy den, just the right size to be her home. When night came, dew formed on the leaves. Drops of water trickled into a hollow beside the spider's den. They made a tiny pool. The moon rose. Moths wakened and flew dizzily about the garden in search of other moths. One saw moonlight shine in the pool. It flew into the water. Its wings became wet. Unable to fly, it drowned. In the morning, when the sun rose, the spider looked into the pool and saw the moth. She walked into the water's edge and had breakfast. Each day, the lady came to tend her garden. She planted seeds and pulled up weeds and sprinkled water. She looked upon the leaves for bugs. She did not want bugs to eat up her garden. Once she saw the spider walking on a leaf, but paid no heed. She knew spiders do not eat lettuce. When the lady's footsteps shook the ground, the spider ran and hid. One day, the ladies brushed the leaves around the spider's home. The spider felt an earthquake, but the lady did not know what she had done. For many days, the garden grew. The lettuce leaves grew bigger. Each day, the spider walked on the leaves searching for food. At noonday, when the sun was high, small flies, the kind with golden eyes, sat quietly on the leaves to warm their wings and rub their hands together. They were the spider's lunch. Birds also dined in the lady's garden. They perched on the fence and looked about sharply, peering here and there, searching for bugs. One day, the spider was having lunch. She was eating a large blue fly. A bird swooped down. Just in time, the spider saw its swift, dark shadow. She leaped into her den. The bird flew off with the fly. As the days grew hot, the lady knew it was time to pick the lettuce. Each day she came to the garden with a basket and a knife and cut off a head of lettuce for her lunch. Each day the lettuce that she picked was closer to the head of lettuce in which the spider lived. One day, when the sun came up and warmed the walls of her den, the spider went out and walked down a green hill to her sparkling pond to see what might be there for breakfast. Just at that moment, the lady came into the garden. She bent down, grasped the head of lettuce, which the spider lived, and cut it off at the roots. She shook off at the dewdrops. She put the lettuce with the spider hidden among the leaves into her basket. Of course, the lady had no idea the spider was there. As the leaf beneath her feet shook, the spider dashed to her den. Her den was gone. The lady's thumb had crushed it. The spider clung to the leaf while the whole green world trembled and shook around her. The lady carried the head of lettuce into her kitchen and laid it on the counter beside the sink. When her world became still, the spider stood up and walked about among the leaves. She tried to see with her 8 eyes. She tried to feel with the tips of her legs. She tried to think with her tiny brain. It was no use. The spider could not know that she had made her home in a head of lettuce in a lady's garden, and that lady intended to eat the lettuce for lunch. The lady bent over the sink. She picked up the lettuce. She parted the leaves and looked for bugs. She did not see the spider, crouched deep in a dark cranny between the 2 leaves. The lady put the lettuce into the sink. She put in the stopper and turned on the water. It poured clean and cold over the leaves. Huge drops of water splashed around the spider. She was caught in an icy river. She lost her grip. She was spun in the stream and was carried down, then pushed up and down again by the surging water. The lady turned off the faucet. The water in the sink became calm. The head of lettuce floated, rocking on tiny waves. Part of it was underwater and part above. The spider struggled upward toward the surface. Her front legs found the edge of a leaf. She was heavy with water. With all her strength, she pulled herself up onto a leafy island. The leaf was cold. It was wet. The spider walked about, waving her long front legs, searching for a dry, dark, safe place to hide. The lady looked down, and a tiny motion caught her eye. She saw a small spider adrift on a raft of lettuce, trying to escape. The lady picked up the leaf with the spider clinging to it and opened the lid of the garbage pail. Just before the leaf dropped from her fingers, a thought crossed her mind. She looked again at the spider. The spider, searching for a place to hide, waved her legs. She waved and waved and waved. Looking closely, the lady saw things she never noticed before. She saw how the spider's color matched the leaves. She saw the tiny dots that were her eyes. She saw how delicately she moved on her slender legs and how she waved and waved and waved. The lady thought, isn't it wonderful that a creature so small can live and love life, find food, and make a home just like me? the lady closed the lid of the garbage pail. Holding the leaf carefully with the spider on board, she went to the garden. She bent over a head of lettuce and gently dropped the spider into its leaves. "Good luck in your new home," said the lady, and walked back to the kitchen for lunch. The spider landed lightly on a sun-warmed, sweet-smelling valley. She sat still until she was warm and dry. Then she walked up a green hill and down a green hill, searching with the tips of her long front legs. Soon she found a nook just the right size. There she waited, safe and snug, waited for lunch, for the sun to set and the moon to rise, and for her tiny, important life to go on. The end. Okay.
I now invite the congregation to remain seated and to form a sheltering arc of love as we sing our young people back to their families and out to class.
For our caring meditation this morning, I present to you work by David Wagoner entitled Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. And you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and to be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers, I have made this place for you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. And I am Reverend Kathleen Fowler. You're privileged to serve as your minister of pastoral care, and my pronouns are she and her. This morning, I pulled out some challenging statistics to hear. More than 30 mass shootings have occurred across the country this year, according to data compiled by the Gun Violence Archive. As 2023 remains on pace to become, sadly, the deadliest year for mass shootings in recent history. May we wake up to the harm being done to our children, to ourselves, and to our national psyche. Record temperatures and smoke-filled skies have shown the threat of wildfires can impact millions of people far away from the fire lines. And data shows that the number and size of wildfires has increased dramatically in the past 2 decades. As one expert acknowledges, we need a new word. We can't call them wildfires because they aren't wild anymore. May we wake up to the harm being done to our children, ourselves, our planet, and to the national psyche. And yet, as Langston Hughes wrote, what can you seek now to make your heart still sing? There is still joy to be found, preciousness of life to be observed, many, many reasons to find hope. So seek them out, my friends. As Michelle Obama reminds us, you may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all the world's problems at once. But don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. And I now invite Sharon Hammersley, our pastoral listener this morning, to come forward. After I read the joys and sorrows you have submitted over the past week, Sharon will read those submitted during the service. And please remember that any submission requesting cards that come in between 4 p.m. on Saturday and the start of this service will be signed next week. So there are 9 caring cards and announcements this morning. We send our concern to Kristen H., who is having a dispute with a neighbor. She would like prayers for a good and peaceful outcome for both parties.
We send our deepest gratitude to Reverend Isabel Call, Amber Scott, Amanda Hayes, Reverend Kelly McNeil, and Reverend Kathleen Fowler. We, the First UU congregants, send our care, concern, and love to you, our ministerial staff, who have undergone confusion, withstood difficulty, and suffered heartbreak during the past few years in a challenging and hurtful work environment. We understand that you have endured this while continuing to work to guide our congregation. We appreciate you greatly. Thank you.
Many thanks to Myra H. for her transformational help in brightening up the office walls with personalized paint colors. This is bringing new life to the offices and to those who work in them. And a big thank you goes to Andy M. for creating a healing staff retreat on Saturday, July 1st. She procured a beautiful retreat space, brought food, gifts, and activities to help the staff prepare for last Sunday's sharing session. Andy is such a gift to this congregation in many ways. And this last, an announcement holding up a fabulous General Assembly with inspirational Unitarian Universalists. And Sharon.
We have 3 additional joys that have come in this morning. Tom B. says, "It is with joy I note that First UU is presenting the art of incarcerated person Jim F. and informing us of the Ohio Justice and Policy Center. Pay it forward." Oh, wrong direction, sorry. Shelley C. would like to express deep gratitude for the dedicated congregants who serve on our Board of Trustees. Thank you. And Julie S. says, "Carolyn S., my daughter, has been selected as part of a Worthington Sister City delegation headed to Sayana, Japan this fall."
We hold all these joys and sorrows, whether spoken or unspoken, gently in our hearts.
The first reading this morning is from the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska, and this poem was read at my installation in 1998 by the late Reverend Carol Brody, the minister emerita of this congregation, whom I deeply loved. It's called Life While You Wait. Performance without rehearsal, body without alterations, head without premeditation, I know nothing of the role I play. I only know it's mine. I can't exchange it. I have to guess on the spot just what this play is all about. Ill-prepared for the privilege of living, I can barely keep up with the pace that the action demands. I improvise, although I loathe improvisation. I trip at every step over my own ignorance. I can't conceal my hayseed manners. My instincts are for happy histrionics. Stage fright makes excuses for me which humiliate me more. Extenuating circumstances strike me as cruel. Words and impulses you can't take back, stars you'll never get counted, your character like a raincoat you button on the run, the pitiful results of all this unexpectedness. If I could only just rehearse one Wednesday in advance, or repeat a single Thursday that has passed. But here comes Friday with a script I haven't seen. Is it fair, I ask, my voice a little hoarse since I couldn't even clear my throat off stage? You'd be wrong to think this is just a slapdash quiz taken in makeshift accommodations. Oh no, I'm standing on the set and I see how well built it is. The props are surprisingly precise. The machine rotating the stage has been around even longer. The farthest galaxies have been turned on. Oh no, there's no question. This must be the premiere. And whatever I do will become forever what I've done. The second reading that Steve Abbott's going to read is from the autobiography of Malcolm X, written in 1975.
I'm pleased to be able to do this reading because Malcolm X's autobiography was a foundational text in my social consciousness. Since I learned the truth in Mecca, my dearest friends have come to include all kinds, some Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, agnostics, even atheists. I have friends who are called capitalists, socialists, and communists. Some of my friends are moderates, conservatives, extremists. Some are even Uncle Toms. My friends today are black, brown, red, yellow, and white. I've had enough of someone else's propaganda. I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it's for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole.
So back in 1998, as I said, the late minister emerita of this congregation, Reverend Carol Brody, whom I loved and I spent time with as often as I could, read that Szymborska poem that I just read during my installation. As a person of Polish heritage herself, she loved the poem and read it absolutely beautifully. I asked her to read that poem in particular because I was beginning to have an inkling, even back then at the beginning, that my retirement has confirmed. Namely, that although I had years of schooling, read thousands of books, experienced decades of actual ministerial work, I still sometimes have no idea what to say or do in certain situations. I felt like the days of the calendar thrust me onto the stage of life when I was not ready. I am sure I have forgotten something, or in anxiety may blurt out the wrong script, one indeed which has not yet been written. Oh no, Szymborska writes, there's no question. This must be the premiere right now. And whatever I do will become forever what I have done. As usual, Szymborska's poems are witty, and yet their truths are for me often weighty and confirm my usual anxieties. I'm speaking from my own experience as a minister, but perhaps some of you responded to the poem from your own perspective, from your own lives. Now, last week I was in New York City for 10 days. I started to go to New York frequently when I retired because for a year I was the long-distance interim preacher at All Souls Church in Manhattan on Lexington Avenue. I would fly out every 6 weeks or so and preach on Sunday, fitting myself into their order of worship, which has changed little in 50 years. I have many good friends and colleagues in New York, and friends who used to live in Ohio who now live there. And my friend Doug kindly lets me stay at his place when I go there. On my first trip there to preach, the woman down the hall and I met at the elevator. She asked who I was, and we exchanged pleasantries. "Come over for a drink later," she said. "I don't drink, but I make a good one." She laughed, I laughed, and I liked her immediately. I went over later that day, and we did become friends quickly because I saw her many times that week. And now I go to New York just to see her as well. She turned 99 years of age on July 2nd last week. She cooked me supper last Tuesday night, and we swapped stories as we always do. Her stories, however, are far more astonishing than any stories I could possibly tell you. Her name is Rita Frederick Salzman. In the mid-1960s in Los Angeles, she produced 2 plays by Leroy Jones, before they were published in book form, that is. Jones eventually changed his name to Amiri Baraka, which some of you may remember that name. The plays, 2 one-acts, The Toilet and The Baptism, were declared obscene by the authorities, and Rita was thrown into jail for producing them. But the plays were seen by Malcolm X before he was murdered in 1965. And Rita had conversations with him because she used to often produce plays that featured Black human beings. And he was impressed by her support of Black artists. I was astonished by her story, to be sure, because I had to ask her, guess who's quoting Malcolm X this coming Sunday? And we both laughed at the synchronicity. Malcolm X, when he was younger, didn't have much love for people like me with a pale skin tone. Having read about his life experiences, I can't say his feelings were misplaced at all. However, he grew through his later life experiences and opened himself up to deeper understandings about his life and his hopes. Once he experienced the Hajj, the pilgrimage in Mecca, where Muslims come from all the nations on earth where there are Muslims, he saw people of skin colors that the rainbow in the sky could only be envious of. And they were all able to relate to each other with friendship and care and even love, doing something together that moved them deeply, their worship at the Kaaba, going around and around that great box. Their languages were all different. People often forget that the largest Muslim country in the world is Indonesia, after all, not some country in the Middle East. Their cultures and their languages were all diverse, and it surprised him. But the experience moved him out of his highly racialized US experience, where earlier in his life, he had understandably lost all reason to trust people who looked like me. But this transformation didn't just happen in a vacuum. Malcolm X used to read books, lots of books, by authors who came from both similar and different places. And he spiritually deepened by asking questions after reading and recognizing that the form of Islam that he practiced in the States was not exactly like the Islam found around the world. And so when he went on his Hajj, his first pilgrimage outside his comfort zone, his life, his heart opened up, and the unnatural boundaries he had set up between himself and many others just crumbled. As he wrote so clearly, "Since I learned the truth in Mecca, my dearest friends have come to include all kinds, some Christians and Jews and Buddhists and Hindus, agnostics and even atheists. I have friends who are called capitalists and socialists and communists. Some of my friends are moderates, conservatives, extremists. Some are even Uncle Toms. My friends today are black and brown and red and yellow and white. I have had enough of someone else's propaganda. I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Those are brilliant words. In our historic tradition, those words are called universalism. Back in the 19th century, universalism had to do with the abolition of the horrific doctrine of hell, that place of eternal torture after death preached by certain conservative Christian groups. In the 20th century, universalism changed its definition and became a studied openness to religious and humanistic ideas beyond the norms for an institution called the church. Fewer references to the Bible that our ancestors used and loved, and far more Buddhist texts and readings from Polish poets and children's stories urging us to care for tiny creatures outside the human circle. In the 20th century, when I was on the commission to put the hymn book together, this kind of universalism was our main concern back then, affirming the wide range of theological and humanistic beliefs and unbeliefs among us, and enlarging our musical styles in a wide embrace. But now, more and more in my personal life in the 21st century, I am less concerned about all those things and more concerned that our worship on Sunday mornings brings us to a place that it brought Malcolm X to when he was in Mecca. I want that to happen for us. On Mondays, when we start our week after today, after Sunday. Malcolm X did not stay in Mecca. He left and was transformed with an open heart to live out the rest of his life, which was centered on justice, yes, but also opened up to a wider sense of love. That is what I want to do, to move past all of my easy comfort zones and greet the larger world in friendship and love across every single boundary. Now, I'm not talking about not setting limits, of course. Abusive folks cannot be embraced as is. I have to say no. I understand that. I've had to set limits many times in my life, including for my own late father. And I'm not saying that we can always be clear about exactly how to reach out on Mondays and Tuesdays. Szymborska makes that perfectly clear. There is no script I can learn today on a Sunday that I can easily use during the week. We're always going to have to improvise in each situation, since each situation is entirely unique and resists categorization. But I have learned that I have to open my eyes, open my ears to the possibility of real communities of love and care far beyond these walls. Now, don't take that sentence literally. I certainly can't afford to. I wear glasses or contacts after all, and if the battery goes out in my hearing aids, I just can't hear you. Now, don't take that sorry, I just lost my place. But Rita told me another story last Tuesday, which opened my heart even more. She knew the great soul, Helen Keller. They were friends. She was the sweetest person, Rita told me, with clear affection in her voice. So Rita once took Helen and her interpreter to the ballet. As you will remember, Helen Keller lost both hearing and sight at an early age. So the idea of going to the ballet is immediately perplexing. But Rita said that once they had been seated, Helen got up, left her seat and the interpreter behind, and went up to the railing that surrounded the pit where the orchestra was, and placed her hands on the railing. After the ballet was finished, she told Rita, via her interpreter, that by holding firmly onto the railing, which went all the way around to the stage, she was able to distinguish between vibrations caused by the thumps of the dancers on the actual stage and also the vibrations of the sounding instruments in the pit. And she was able to experience the full beauty of the ballet. She wanted so much to experience the ballet, and she did. And as Rita said, with a great smile on her face. Our 21st century universalism asks us to do the same thing, but to actually go further. To leave our comfortable purple seats here on Sunday and to go into Monday to see and hear past our ease and comfort level. To get out of our Sunday seats and go into Monday grasping tight onto the universalist insight to all of our relationships in our communities and letting those vibrations of insight strumming in our heritage, reinterpreted in the 21st century, to help us to experience a world more just and less divided, that we can help bring about by showing up to others, even if we're introverted. In a few minutes, we're going to read a poem by the late Francisco X. Alarcón, which begins, "May our ears hear what nobody wants to hear, may our eyes see what everyone wants to hide. To wit, the reality of racial structures permeating our culture, the real vulnerability these days of the lives of queer persons like me, it's the still diminished role of women in as regards to equal pay and glass ceilings and so forth. The hard distortions we hear about immigration and many other things many seek to hide and to not hear. Come Monday, we will be called to live out our universalism for real. We'll have to improvise, like Szymborska says, but it's our real lives we're talking about. Remember what she said? You'd be wrong to think it's just a slapdash quiz. Oh no. I'm on the set right now. I see how strong it is. The props are surprisingly precise. The machine rotating the stage, our planet, has been around even longer. The farthest galaxies have been turned on. Oh no, there's no question. This must be the premiere. And whatever I do will become whatever I have done. And of course, having said all this, I have to end with another quotation from Malcolm X. He asked this in 1970. How can anyone be against love?
Each week, we set aside this time to reflect upon what those before us have given to us and what we can provide for others in the present and the future. Your annual financial pledges and weekly donations create a foundation from which we can confidently predict what this church can and will be. In July, our Share the Plate recipient is Sedona Grace. Sedona Grace provides dog and cat food to 15 Central Ohio food pantries, including the Clintonville Beechwold Community Resource Center, so families experiencing hard times do not have to give up their pets because they cannot afford to feed them. You can also contribute by bringing cat or dog food to the Justice Action Ministry table on Sunday mornings this month and next. Routine sharing of our gifts with a community organization is a tangible manifestation of our 8 principles in action. Your gifts help bring a better church and a better world. Thank you. Our offering will now be gratefully received.
I'm going to ask you all to rise as willing and able. Turn to the insert inside your order of celebration. This is a poem by Francisco X. Alarcón. The words at the top, in Ixtli, in Yotl, are the Aztec language. And he used to write his poems in Nahuatl, the Aztec language, and also Spanish and English all mixed together. And it goes all the way down on the first column and then goes back up to the second column. May our ears hear what nobody wants to hear. May our eyes see what everyone wants to hide. May our mouths speak our true faces and true hearts. May our arms be branches that give shade and joy. Let us be a drizzle, a sudden storm. Let us get wet in the rain. Let us be the key, the hand, the door, the kick, the ball, the road. Let us arrive as children to this huge playground, the universe. And we close with 363, Alleluia, saying stars.
I invite you now, if you are comfortable, to hold hands or place your hands over your heart as we extinguish our chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves and our world. Our chalice is extinguished.